because you are essentially helping them change their identity. And this is a big, big thing with people. And you've got to understand that when you're moving from one identity to the next, so someone that doesn't train to someone that does train 3 times a week, you've got to understand that the old identity is going to want to survive. So it's going to say, oh, don't go, I'll do that. And it's going to have this little whisper in your ear.
I'm sure you probably know this statistic, but the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide, right?
A lot of it's communication. We've been told we have to be provider, strong, silent type, just get on. Well, the thing is, most people always gravitate to a thing called motivation. Right. And this thing fluctuates up and down. Whereas discipline is something that you do regardless of what's going on.
Hi, and welcome back to Men's World Today. As you know, Men's World Today is all about empowering men. Today, I'm joined by Gavin Johnson, someone who sits at a really interesting intersection of performance, creativity, and personal evolution. What stands out about Gavin isn't just what he does, but also how he thinks. There's a depth, a focus on discipline, self-awareness, and continuous growth. More impressively, Gavin has written a book, The Little Book of Empowerment. So Gavin, please tell us, what motivated you to write this book?
I've always gravitated towards helping people. It's always been something that's there, whether it's through inspiring people through my sport, through just generally seeing how people can pick better options and find the best ways for them to sort of succeed. I've had my career as an athlete, and then when lockdown happened, I decided to take on a life coaching course, to add to my personal training and coaching athletics. And then once I started getting into it and I was reading more around that subject, I just decided I need to get my message out there in the way that I would like to hear it. Because a lot of the self-help books I found were very helpful, very insightful, but very, very long-winded. And it felt like I was reading the same message over and over and over. And you had to decipher a lot between a lot of sort of almost self-indulgent stories. I wanted something that was a bit more direct, just explaining what these tools are, what they mean, how to use them, and how they could best help people. And it just became quite a concise, sharp book. And then, it just sort of flew out of me. It took me about 2-3 weeks to write. And then, I just put it out there.
But what is it? Who is the person? Who are you? What is it that made you want to do? How did you get into the world of reading about self-help books anyway? What happened?
So just go right back from the beginning. I was born in New York, came over here as a young kid with my mum to London. My whole family are artists, singers, dancers, and actors and things like that. So say like my uncles for the older crew was in Loose End, and then my other cousin was in Mystique and stuff like this. So I've always had lots of artists and really, really creative people around me. So that was a massive influence on sort of just seeing the world in a slightly different way to most families, I guess. And my mum was always into fashion and always had these weird and interesting people around the house. So it just was, I got to really meet a wide range of people, and it really had a big impact on me and how I developed. And then I just gravitated towards more sports and active stuff. And I was naturally quite good at it. I went from doing martial arts to, more conventional sports like tennis and rugby, and then finally landed on athletics when I did my degree in economics and politics and philosophy. From there, I just decided I wanted to continue with sports because I just believe I've got certain attributes to use at this particular time. So let's use it now. Because, I don't want to look back when I'm 50 years old and think, I could have been a champion or did something. I wanted to just give it a go. And that's kind of my nature. If I see something I want to try, I just go for it. I go for the most difficult version of it, and I just apply myself. So, of course, I went into the decathlon, which is the most difficult event in track and field. Off the bat at the age of about 26, 27, which wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I did it, I went through it, didn't do it very well. So I went through that, and then my coach sat down with me and said, look, the decathlon isn't working out for you. Let's pivot. And I decided to stay with the javelin because that was the strongest one out of my events. And then within a couple of years, I was national champion. As an athlete, you get to see how it inspires so many people, so many kids, coaching young kids, even adults, people just coming along down to the track and just helping them, coming from barely being able to run in a straight line to competently doing a particular event and seeing the light in their eyes as they learn something new and they want to come back the following week, do it again and improve. It's a powerful thing to sort of receive. And then through personally with the athletics, there was lots of things going on in my personal life, lots of traumas that everyone goes through, I suppose. But athletics was a place where I felt in control, where I felt strong. This was so, you know, if everything else was crumbling around me, this was the place where I could go and I was the strongest guy there. I was fast. It just made me feel powerful. And it was a positive sort of impact because lots of people go down the route of maybe drugs, alcohol, and whereas my vice was the sport and winning. I love to win. So I just turned everything into an opportunity to do something positive and be competitive.
I mean, what a lovely vice to have. Yeah. Athletics, you know. And what's impressive is like you're a coach, you are an artist,
yes,
and you're a writer.
Yes.
I mean, what was childhood like?
It was a collective of everybody that I was around growing up because a lot of the time, lots of people get put off going into the arts, for example, because family are just like, this is unrealistic. You're going to be on the street, you're poor. You know, it's not seen as something that you can make a living from. And back in our day when I was younger, if you did art, you was either going to be in Leicester Square or an art teacher, the type of thing. And that's what you're kind of given as a package. Whereas for me, I saw real life examples of it being successful. I've seen it very successful, you know, made millions and millions of dollars off the back of their passions and their ability and their talent, you know. So I just was never in a household where a lawyer, a doctor, or working in a corporation was an option. It just wasn't something that was ever discussed. It was like, well, you're going to be an actor, a singer, an artist. That was my options, you know, and I had that freedom to do, or sports, you know, because as well as all the artistic influences, my uncles and aunts were very, very great, really good sportsmen. You know, that's how I got into martial arts, because my uncle was a 6-dan grandmaster in Wushu Kwan, so he was my teacher. And then he got that from his sister, who went to the class first time, and then he took it on. And then him himself, who was an engineer for submarines, back in the day when submarines were still quite heavily used and stuff like that. So he was very mathematically sort of in tune as well. So, you know, it just was always a thing. I believe that human beings are multifaceted, and the society likes to box you into you're a sports person and stupid, or you're intelligent and weak. And actually, it doesn't need to be the case. And it's quite common in a lot of the private schools as well, where they actually put you in positions where you excel at everything. You're going to be the top rugby player and you're going to be top of class. It's just normal. So it's only when I left school and I realized that this is not something that most people subscribe to, I was like, oh, that's strange, because I was used to having a friend that was running for Great Britain and then the top of the maths class, and it just was just normal. You just did everything. You just need to prioritize your time and do what matters to you. So if it matters to you to be X, Y, Z, then make the time for it.
At what age were you when you picked up your first self-help book? Because, you know, this would have come from somewhere.
It was probably in my mid-20s.
Right,
It wasn't necessarily a self-help book. It was a book called Conversations with God. And it's quite a famous book.
Sounds like I've heard that book.
Yeah, before. It's very good. And a lot of people get put off by the title, because a lot of people are quite anti-religion or don't want to hear God in the title. But actually, it's not really about that. It's just about different systems and how the universe works if you're spiritual. And it's just got very interesting concepts that really spoke to me. It's 3 parts, and it's broken up where talking about you as a personal person, then society, and then the universe as a whole. Wow. So it's a really nice, expansive book. And it just, for me personally, it just made a lot of sense. And then it led me on to other areas, and then just having lots of sort of self-analysis of what's going on around me. And because I've got ADHD as well. So one of my things that is a gift that most ADHD people have is like they have one thing that kind of sticks out. I think mine is pattern recognition. So I notice patterns very, very quickly. and I'm able to pick up on stuff. So when I notice these things, it would just help me piece together and helps me get out of certain situations that I didn't want to be in, essentially.
And what was the biggest takeaway from that book?
The I am statement. That's what really stuck with me, because it's a powerful statement, because whatever you say, the brain wants it to be true. So you need to make sure that you're using the right vocabulary and using the right language and being kind to yourself. I always say this to people: be kinder to yourself, because we always beat ourselves up internally. And all of those things that you're saying to yourself, the brain will make it true if you keep repeating it, and you'll find yourself in more and more difficult situations. So when you say stuff like I am, I am strong, I am powerful, and this is what my coaches used to say to me when I get to the track: you're the most important person then. And also the importance of the language that you use, instead of saying stuff like I want. So it's always going to be just away from you. And then if you do get it, it's never feels as satisfying as you imagined, as opposed to having.
It sounds like that book has had a pretty, profound effect on you. I can relate to a lot of it. I've heard those analogies in so many different places. So yeah, it's quite powerful. And that whole thing about I am, and one of the things that made me start Men's World Today was I was going through a trauma, right? Now, when you're going through bad things like that, you always turn around and go, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I'm such a... I should have seen this. I should have... And it's like those little statements, they make the process much more painful.
You need to go through those periods.
Yeah,
you do need to acknowledge them. You need to honor them. You need to go through them. But at the same time, you need to remember that your brain is a problem-solving machine. And it's only as good as the questions you ask it a lot of the time. So you need to make sure that you're in a calm place, and that comes from language. So if you're using inflammatory language like this is impossible, this is disaster, your brain is going to be so stressed out, so closed off that you're going to miss the answer. Whereas you can say, okay, this is a little bit, what can I do to make myself feel better? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to speak to? What is going to put me in a place where I'm going to feel like myself again, or on a road to something a bit more helpful?
So, before the book, how did you deal with stress? I mean, before you learned the tools to the point where you were able to write a book.
I feel like intuitively I fell upon a few things, and as I said before, I was recognizing various different patterns. So I'd look to everything from horoscopes to I'm just looking for any sort of pattern that I can sort of grasp onto to see why certain things are happening the way they were. And early on, when you're not aware of these sort of tools, you fall into the same pitfalls of why me, which is one of the worst questions you could ask yourself. And then you used to start beating yourself up. And I used to go through a process where I'd have to beat myself up till I'm literally on the floor. Obviously not a helpful way of doing things, because there'll be that day when you go too far.
I'm sure you probably know these statistics, but the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide, right? And the last time I read it, it was 65% of these people exhibit signs of depression. Right? I have my own reasons why I think the suicide rate is that high. But what do you think, from your vantage point as a sportsman who's led this disciplined life, as an artist who's able to, create stuff from positions of subtlety and creative imagination, and, a writer who can obviously articulate your words from a philosophical perspective? Like, what do you think is causing this problem for us guys?
A lot of it's communication. We've been told we have to be provider, strong, silent type, just get on. And if you do express any sort of side of emotion or anything like that, it's seen as a weakness. And most men don't want to come across as weak, but they're still feeling that pain. It's very easy to go down that spiral and just sort of beat yourself up, than actually say, okay, this is my problem. I've done this, that, and the other. That's not quite right. Let me work on these things. Let me get this help here and there, and actually move forward. It's a lot easier to just internalize and just sink within yourself, and it feels almost just this, just heaviness just takes over, and it's very, very difficult for you to sort of move out. And because a lot of men don't have that structure or that infrastructure to be able to reach out to their friends or family to discuss and unload a lot of these things, like a lot of women may do. And this is the problem. And you start to believe that no one really cares. So you think, what's the point in me saying anything? Let me try and deal with it myself. And if you haven't got the right tools to do it, it's just like having a broken car. Trying to fix it without having any knowledge of the mechanic, you're going to completely destroy that car. You're going to completely destroy that car. You're not going to know what you're doing. So for me, it's very important to have books like mine and these topics of NLP, CBT, pain and pleasure principles. All these types of things need to be taught, especially to boys at a very, very young age, so that they've got these tools that they can use, and it will eradicate a lot of problems, I believe. So it's just, again, from grassroots, it needs to be, networks need to be built up. Parenting, they need to tell their boys that it's okay to cry, it's okay to reach out, it's okay to speak to people, it's okay to express, your emotions. And this is what, again, led me to write one of my first fiction books, because I wrote it from the perspective of a woman. Purposely, and gave it a complete crazy emotional range, and it's really, really in depth of everything.
Wow.
And people were like, oh wow, how do you know how this feels? And it's like, yes, men do have that spectrum. They can feel all of the things, but they only choose to show certain things because it's socially acceptable. Yeah. But it doesn't mean we don't have those feelings of love, loss, all those things that are typically associated with the female side of society.
I totally agree with you. All those emotions or all those things you just said, society doesn't equate that with masculinity.
Well, for me, I feel like it's more of a how we frame what strength is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And everyone's got this sort of view of what strength is. It's just, I can take a punch and I can walk through it. This is very, very superficial strength. The strength to have the emotional depth, to understand certain things, to process certain things. That's very strong. To be able to accept and take responsibility for various different things and actually process that and actually come out the other side with a helpful and constructive answer. That's strong, because that takes a lot of strength to admit that things aren't quite working out. Because that's what a lot of people won't do. A man won't ask for direction because he wants to act like he knows what he's doing. In society, you have to know what you're doing. You're a leader. You need to lead. And if you don't show that leadership, then you're not a man. It's that kind of ridiculous analogy. And it's those things that we need to say, ask for directions. It's okay. That's true. If this is what these books are here for. This is what these communities and networks are here for. This is what this podcast is here for.
Yeah. This is why I started Men's World Today. This whole men talking and being honest with ourselves is such a big thing. Why do you think most of us find it so difficult to be disciplined about things, particularly around when we're trying to get over bad habits?
Well, the thing is, most people always gravitate to a thing called motivation. Right. And this thing fluctuates up and down, and it's all emotional. A lot of the time, it's emotional based, how you feel at that particular time, and that's when it leads into motivation. Whereas discipline is something that you do regardless of what's going on. So what I like to compare it to is brushing your teeth. Simple things like this. The reason why you do that every single day is because you associate the pain of not brushing your teeth to the bad reaction of people smelling your breath or the tooth decay and the money you have to spend to fix all of that stuff. So you've got lots of different layers of pain as to why that keeps you in that sort of area to continue doing those types of things. This is, use me, for example. I want to be national champion in my particular event. I know that if I was to drink every single night, party with my friends, spend my time watching EastEnders instead of going to the track, eating fast food all the time, I'm going to be moving further and further away from my goal. So therefore, it's causing me a pain. So therefore, when it comes to me doing the things that I need to do, the discipline is there. I've made the statement, I am an athlete and I need to prove that identity every single day. So I've made that statement, so I want it to be true. So for me to make that true, I need to do X, Y, Z. Motivation is not really, it's there, but it's not the key sort of component of me doing everything. It's the discipline. And if you do those other things, you're moving further and further away, and that should cause you pain. Because if you claim and you say you want to be those things, then prove it.
Breaking down what you really want into the components parts where you can apply that pain and pleasure principle to everything.
Because you associate certain things with pleasure. Everyone gravitates towards a pleasure response. And when you don't have that, it becomes the opposite, and you don't want to experience that. That's how we kind of rule our lives, through those experiences. So once I set that discipline up and I start to experience myself getting closer and closer to that goal that I've set myself, it becomes more and more pleasurable. And then I start seeing that those other things are not. So I used to drink just like everybody else. I used to party, I used to have a great time. But for me to be the best athlete I can be, I can't do those things.
So taking this to my Men's World fraternity, this journey of self-mastery, is it a case of motivation or is it discipline?
100% discipline. You need to have your non-negotiables every single day. You've got 2 or 3 of them every single day without fail. You do these things. You set them up. You even preload your decision making so you don't have to and ah and give yourself a chance to talk yourself out of it. Because that little voice in the back of your head isn't your friend. It's giving you these little exits. You need to make sure that you stick to those principles. So even the day before, or even preload a week if you're that great, and just say, today, on Monday, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And you just do it. You don't think about it, you just do it. It might not be the best you've ever done, but you've done it. Like there's been plenty of times when I've gone to training and I've not been at my best. I felt tired, all the things that you can imagine.
Tell me a bit about how you got into art then.
I've been drawing since I was a kid. I mean, it was just always sort of something that I did. I was thinking about the other day, I had this obsession with Godzilla. So I used to draw dinosaurs smashing buildings, and it was quite destructive and a bit worrying maybe. But again, I was just in an environment, all my friends were drawing. They were top class in science, maths and English, and they also represented the country. So it was just like everyone just did everything. And obviously some people had a bigger aptitude to art than others, and it's just natural. But a lot of my close friends, they were also artists as well. So it was just something that we just did together. I was a massive fan of anime and comic book art, especially in, Marvel stuff. So it was just stuff like that. And I really liked the fantasy stuff. I was drawn to things like, The Labyrinth, the old movie with David Bowie. And just fantasy films like this, which really captured my imagination. As I got into my early 20s, I kind of was just doing 1 picture a year. But I found my drawing was getting better and better when I was only doing once a year. And then I just sort of thought to myself, it must be my life experiences. The way I see a face, the way I see things is just coming through. And then lockdown happened and I wasn't able to train. And then my friend had a canvas and I saw a particular abstract style, which I'd never tried before. And it just seemed interesting. And then once I started doing that, I just sort of fell in love with it and continued from there.
How does that differ in terms of like emotion, or is it the same thing? I'm just trying to understand the rigorousness of the sport to the subtlety.
Sports offers me, it's a different feeling. It's very competitive. It's very sort of my thing. By virtue of me doing that, inspires other people, but it's very much my own personal goal where I feel strong. I like to compete. I like winning. I like that feeling. Whereas when I'm doing my art, it's very... Again, it's self-reflective, but in a different way. I've learned a lot about myself through questioning, through combining, because my artwork does reflect a lot of the concepts that I have in my books. So it's very inspirational driven, using various different colours, forms and textures to basically convey messages. So when you say you do all these things, for me, it's the same message. I'm just showing it in different forms.
Right, okay.
Through my sport, I'm inspiring people to do that. Through my art, I'm using various different abstractions to inspire. Through my words, I'm doing various different things to inspire. So it's all the same message, but just in a different way, and there's different access points.
If you could only do one, which one would you stick with?
If I did the sports without the art, then I'm not Gavin anymore. You can't just remove a part of me. Right. It's just like saying, would you like your right hand or your left hand? It's like, no, actually, I prefer to have both. And I can actually be me and do everything that I can be. It's just great traveling off, because this year I'm going to be going to Korea for the first time, and it's going to be an amazing trip, and I'm really looking forward to it. So it gives you lots of different options, and you get to meet so many different types of people. But then with the art, it's a different feeling. For me, when I do my art and my pieces, I feel like I'm people of their greatness. This is one of the biggest messages. So it's lots of things to do with awareness, abundance, mindset, love and passion, and the sort of importance to cultivate those things. And even the textures are there for you to touch. People say don't touch the art. For me, I've done it purposely so you can actually connect with the work emotionally. And it's also there as a double thing to remind you to take action, because there's no point in you having all these great ideas and you're not moving forward. That's one of the biggest steps that most people miss, is actually getting up and actually taking action. So there is the action point. Touch the work. You've taken action. You've got the emotion there. You've got the story. Now you've touched it. You've taken action. You've moved forward.
How long have you been writing for?
Quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a while. Again, nothing more than GCSE. I was very good at storytelling, but then what the teacher did, which was really bad, because I had a particular style of writing, which was kind of similar to like breaking the fourth wall sort of comedy sort of style. And I had that from a very, very young age. And all the kids in the class loved it when I read it out. But then the teacher saw that I was staying in this style quite a lot. And she just said, no, you can't write like this. You have to do it like this. And just completely restricted everything that naturally was my sort of way of doing things. And it just sort of killed my passion for writing. So I stopped altogether. And, you know, it just shows you the importance of the influence and the teachers in society, and they can really, and the same with art. Yeah. My art teacher, I wanted to do A-level, and he said, oh no, don't do that, it's not really for you. And I stopped. And that's when I ended up just drawing one bit here and there. And now here I am. I never thought in a million years I'd be here, but now I'm professionally doing art, and I've exhibited all over the world, in Miami, and sold paintings from Australia to New York, you know, but he said I shouldn't do it.
So what next? You're also a coach, right?
Yeah, I've officially got my coaching badge today renewed as well. I've got my little card.
MensWorld, this is the guy. Yeah, we're talking about balanced, holistic lifestyle. You know, this is why MensWorld covers so many areas. It's reality. It's our lives. You know, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. Yes. Wow.
Yeah. Again, it's an extension of that because you know I do personal training. I've been doing that for a long time. A lot of the time, the people, it's their minds that need training. A lot of the time. So people come to you and they just sort of vomit everything onto you, which is absolutely fine. That's what you're there for as a personal coach, because it's in the title.
So is there much difference between a personal coach?
It's different. I mean, with the life coaching side of things, you've got people that want change but don't know how to do it. So you're there to guide them through your experiences and your knowledge.
Of course.
Taking people that want change but don't quite know how to get there, and you're just guiding them and you're keeping them accountable. Right. And this is what the book is there to help. Yeah, of course, and then at the same time with personal training, again, it's more physical side of things. Right, but then as a backdrop on you do end up training them mentally and helping them, because you are essentially helping them change their identity. And this is a big, big thing with people. And you've got to understand that when you're moving from one identity to the next, so someone that doesn't train to someone that does train 3 times a week, you've got to understand that the old identity is going to want to survive. So it's going to say, oh, don't go, I'll do that. And it's going to have this little whisper in your ear. And you've got to give yourself time to mourn that change, a death of certain aspects. And you need to give that space. And it's for both the coach and the person going through it to understand that. So when the coach gets impatient, why don't you just do this? And you've got to realize he's mourning an identity loss. There's something that's changing here, and you need to give them that space to really come to terms with it. Then they can confidently walk into that new personality and that new identity.
You sound very busy. How do you relax?
I try to streamline myself a lot. I mean, it does get overwhelming when you're spinning a lot of places a lot of times. And, you know, I found that out the hard way with running an art studio and being an athlete. And it got to a point where I had to actually choose one because it was just too taxing, because being an artist is a lot more than just painting on the canvas. You've got to think of so many different things in terms of transporting your art, going into the right exhibitions, networking with the right people, having to deal with people that haven't got your best interests at heart all the time. You know, a lot of elements you have to consider. And then with the athletics, it's, you know, very physically taxing, as you can imagine. And then on top of that, the mental aspect of keeping yourself in that positive state of mind, you know, constantly reinforcing, even though the results may not reflect that you are the best and you can win. As of this year, I had to sort of give up the art studio. Still doing the art, but I had to reduce that so that I can focus on the sports a bit more. Because, as I said, you're only physically able to do sports for a certain period at a certain level, like here and now, whereas the art, you know, it's there until there's no air in my lungs.
Now, MensWorld, we're going to be meeting Gavin again soon, and we're going to talk about his book, which I think is fantastic. This little gem here, the little book of empowerment, seriously, I think it's an absolute must read for every guy out there. Gavin, please,
I'm 43.
Wow. Well, there you go. The perfect Men's World person. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to Gavin today. But Gavin, in the interim, where can people find you? What are you up to?
Well, I've got a website called artbygav.com, and that's where you can find all of my artwork and my books where it's available. And then you also can find me on Instagram on Gavin Johnson Art.
Thank you very much once again for watching Men's World Today and this conversation with Gavin Johnson. It's been an absolute eye-opener. Gavin, thank you so much for coming to Men's World Today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And so until next time, take care of yourselves and have a good weekend.